Namaste, Dandavad Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Mahārāja, we are here reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 4, The Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 8, Text 6. Atatta kirtaye vamsam, punya kirte kurudvaha, Svayambhuvasya Pimanor Hare Samsa Janmana. Maitreya continued, O best of the Kuru dynasty, I shall now describe to you the descendants of Svayambhuva Manu, who was born a part of the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Lord Brahma is a powerful expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although Brahma is Jivatattva, he is empowered by the Lord, and therefore he is considered a plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes it happens that when there is no suitable living being to be empowered to act as Brahma, the Supreme Lord himself appears as Brahma. Brahma is the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Svayambhuva Manu was the direct son of Brahma. The great sage Maitreya is now going to explain about the descendants of this Manu, all of whom are widely celebrated for their pious activities. Before speaking of these pious descendants, Maitreya has already described the descendants of impious activities, representing anger, envy, unpalatable speech, quarrel, fear, and death. Purposely, therefore, he is next relating the history of the life of Dhruva Maharaj, the most pious king within this universe. Text 7. Priyavratotanan pado Satarupa pate suto Vasudevasya kalaya Rakshayam jagatastito. Svayambhuva Manu had two sons by his wife Satarupa, and the names of the sons were Uttanapada and Priyavrata. Because both of them were descendants of a plenary expansion of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they were very competent to rule the universe, to maintain and protect the citizens. Purport. It is said that these two kings, Uttanapad and Priyavrata, were specifically empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unlike the great king Rishabha, who was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Text 8. Jaye Uttanapadasya Suniti Suruchistayo Suruchi Preyasi Pratyor Netarayatsu to Dhruva. Dandavad Pranam, Umadevi. King Uttanapad had two queens, named Suniti and Suruchi. Suruchi was much more dear to the king. Suniti, who had a son named Dhruva, was not his favorite. Purport. The great sage Maitreya wanted to describe the pious activities of the kings. Priyavrata was the first son of Svayambhuva Manu, and Uttanapad was the second. But the great sage Maitreya immediately began to speak of Dhruva Maharaj. Because Maitreya was very eager to describe pious activities. The incidents in the life of Dhruva Maharaj are very attractive for devotees. From his pious actions, one can learn how one can detach himself from material possessions and how one can enhance one's devotional service by severe austerities and penances. By hearing the activities of pious Dhruva, one can enhance one's faith in God and can directly connect with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus one can very soon be elevated to the transcendental platform of devotional service. The example of Dhruva Maharaja's austerities can immediately generate a feeling of devotional service in the heart of the hearers. Text 9. Ekada suruche putram ankam aropya lalayan uttamam narurukshantam dhruvam rajabhayandata. Once upon a time, King Uttanapad was patting the son of Suruchi, Uttama, placing him on his lap. Dhruva Maharaj was also trying to get on the king's lap, but the king did not very much welcome him. Text 10. Dandavat Pranam Ananda Krishna Prabhu.
Dandavat Krishna Krishna.
Tata Chikshirshamahanam Tam Sapatanyasthanayam Dhruvam Suruchi Shrinvato Ragya Sirsham Ahati Garvita. While the child Dhruva Maharaj was trying to get on the lap of his father, Suruchi, his stepmother, became very envious of the child, and with great pride she began to speak so as to be heard by the king himself. Purport. The king, of course, was equally affectionate toward both his sons, Uttama and Dhruva, so he had a natural inclination to take Dhruva, as well as Uttama, on his lap. But because of his favoritism towards his queen, Suruchi, he could not welcome Dhruva Maharaj, despite his feelings. King Uttanapad's feeling was understood by Suruchi, and therefore with great pride she began to speak about the king's affection for her. This is the nature of women. If a woman understands that her husband regards her as a favorite and is especially affectionate to her, she takes undue advantage. These symptoms are visible even in such an elevated society as the family of Swayambhuva Manu. Therefore, it is concluded that the feminine nature of woman is present everywhere. Text 11. Navatsa nirpatir disnyam bhavan arodhum arhati nagrihito mayayatvam kukshavhapi nripatmaja. Queen Suruchi told Dhruva Maharaj, "My dear child, you do not deserve to sit on the throne or on the lap of the king. Surely you are also the son of the king, but because you did not take your birth from my womb, you are not qualified to sit on your father's lap." Purport. Queen Suruchi very proudly informed Dhruva Maharaj that to be the king's son was not the qualification for sitting on the lap or the throne of the king. Rather, this privilege was dependent on one's having taken birth from her womb. In other words, she indirectly informed Dhruva Maharaj that although he happened to be born of a king, he was considered an illegitimate son because of his birth from the womb of the other queen. Text 12. Bhalhosi bhattanatmanam anyastri garba sambritam nunam veda bhavanyasya dorlabhe manorata. My dear child, you are unaware that you were born not of my womb, but of another woman. Therefore, you should know that your attempt is doomed to failure. You are trying to fulfill a desire which is impossible to fulfill. Purport. The small child, Dhruva Maharaj, was naturally affectionate toward his father, and he did not know that there was a distinction between his two mothers. This distinction was pointed out by Queen Suruchi, who informed him that since he was the child that since he was a child, he did not understand the distinction between the two queens. This is another statement of Queen Suruchi's pride. Text 13. Tapashardhya purusham tasyaivanugrahaname garbhe tvam sadhayatmanam yadichasi nripasanam. If you at all desire to rise to the throne of the king, then you have to undergo severe austerities. First of all, you must satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, and then when you are favored by him, because of such worship, you shall have to take your next birth from my womb. Purport. Suruchi was so envious of Dhruva Maharaj that she indirectly asked him to change his body. According to her, first of all he had to die, then take his next body in her womb, and only then would it be possible for Dhruva Maharaj to ascend the throne of his father. Text 14. Maitreya uvacha matu sapnyasa turukti vidha svasan rusa tanda ato yatahi hitva mishantam pitaram sanavacham jagham mamatu prahudan sakasham. The sage Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, as a snake, when struck by a stick, breathes very heavily, Dhruva Maharaj, having been struck by the strong words of his stepmother, began to breathe very heavily because of great anger. When he saw that his father was silent and did not protest, he immediately left the palace and went to his mother. Text 15. Tamni hisvasantam swarita darostam sunitir utsanga udhuhya bhalam nishamyatat pora mukhan nitantam savivyate yadgaditam sapatnya. When Dhruva Maharaj reached his mother, his lips were trembling in anger, and he was crying very grievously. Queen Suniti immediately lifted her son onto her lap, while the palace residents, who had heard all the harsh words of Suruchi, related everything in detail. Thus Suniti also became greatly aggrieved. Text 16. Sochjadaryam vilalapa soka Tavagnina dhava lateva bhala Vakyam sapatnya smarati saroja Shriyadrisha bhaspakalam uvaha. This incident was unbearable to Suniti's patience. She began to burn as if in a forest fire, and in grief she became just like a burnt leaf and so lamented. As she remembered the words of her co-wife, her bright lotus-like face filled with tears, and thus she spoke. Purport. When a man is aggrieved, he feels exactly like a burnt leaf in a forest fire. Suniti's position was like that. Although her face was as beautiful as a lotus flower, it dried up because of the burning fire caused by the harsh words of her co-wife. 17. Dirgham svashanti vrijnasya param apasyati bhalakam ahabhala mamangalam tattapareshu mamsta bhunte janoyat paradukadastat. She also was breathing very heavily, and she did not know the factual remedy for the painful situation. Not finding any remedy, she said to her son, My dear son, don't wish for anything inauspicious for others. Anyone who inflicts pain upon others suffers himself from that pain. 18. Satyam surucha vihitam bhavan me Yador Bhagaya Udare Grihita Stanyena Vradascha Vilajateyam Varyeti Vavoram Idarspatirmam. Suniti said, my dear boy, whatever has been spoken by Suruchi is so, because the king, your father, does not consider me his wife or even his maidservant. He feels ashamed to accept me. Therefore, it is a fact that you have taken birth from the womb of an unfortunate woman, and by being fed from her breast, you have grown up. 19. Atista tat tat davimatsarastvam Uttam samatrapi had avyalikam Aradhaya doksaja pada padmam Yadicha sedhyayasanam Yadicha sedhyasanam uttamayata. My dear boy, whatever has been spoken by Suruchi, your stepmother, although very harsh to hear, is factual. Therefore, if you desire at all to sit on the same throne as your stepbrother Uttama, then give up your envious attitude and immediately try to execute the instructions of your stepmother. Without further delay, you must engage yourself in worshiping the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. The harsh words used by Suruchi to her stepson were true because unless one is favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot achieve any success in life. Man proposes, God disposes. Suniti, the mother of Dhruva Maharaj, agreed with her co-wife's advice that Dhruva engage himself in the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Indirectly, the words of Suruchi were a benediction for Dhruva Maharaj, for because of the influence of his stepmother's words, he became a great devotee. Text 20. Yasyangri padmam paricharya vishva Vibhavanayata gunabhipatte Ajodhyatistat kalu paramistyam Padam jitatma svasana bhivandyam. Suniti continued, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so great that simply by worshipping his lotus feet, your great-grandfather, Lord Brahma, acquired the necessary qualifications to create this universe. Although he is unborn and is the chief of all living creatures, he is situated in that exalted post because of the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whom even great yogis worship by controlling the mind and regulating the life air, prana. Purport. Suniti cited the example of Lord Brahma, who was Dhruva Maharaj's great-grandfather. Although Lord Brahma is also a living being, by his penance and austerity he acquired the exalted position of the creator of this universe by the mercy of the Supreme Lord. To become successful in any attempt, one not only has to undergo severe penances and austerities, but also must be dependent on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This indication had been given to Dhruva Maharaj by his stepmother and was now confirmed by his own mother, Suniti. And thus ends our reading for today. We'll continue from text 21 on Wednesday. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai.
Yeah.
Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai.
Yeah.
All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the worldwide devotees, Sama Bhaktivedanta Vrinda Ki Jai.
Yeah.
Jai Navadvip Ki Jai, Nrsimhapali Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai.
Yeah.
Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai.
Yeah.
Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ju Ki Jai.
Yeah.
Gangamai Yamunamai Ki Jai.
Yeah.
Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai.
Yeah.
Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Ki Jai.
Yeah.
Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki jai,
Jai.
Scientific Sankirtan Yagya ki jai,
Jai.
Princeton Bhaktivedanta Institute ki jai, Sri
Jai.
Chaitanya Saraswat Institute ki jai,
Jai.
Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat ki jai,
Jai.
Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari
Hari Bol.
Jai
Om
Srimad
Pranam.
Prabhu ki jai.
Jai. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.